They called her the twice-cursed wolf. For 19 years, Aelith Voss endured what no wolf should survive: 2 fated mates, 2 devastating betrayals. The first abandoned her at the altar. The second let another woman claim him while Aelith watched from the shadows, her heart shattering like glass on stone. They stripped her of rank. They branded her defective. They cast her into the frozen wilderness beyond the Veilfall, where no wolf returns alive. But they didn't know what slept inside her veins. They didn't know that her silence wasn't surrender. It was a cage holding back something primordial, something hungry, and something that had been waiting for the perfect moment to wake. When the Alpha King found her broken body beneath the thundering waters, he didn't see a rejected Omega. He saw the wolf from the oldest prophecy, the one his bloodline had been searching for across 5 centuries. Get ready, because the storm wolf is rising, and every alpha who ever made her kneel is about to learn what true power looks like. The scent of pine smoke and roasting venison drifted through the Crimson Hollow pack house, but Aelith Voss couldn't smell any of it. Her nose had gone numb hours ago, pressed against the frozen window of the servant's cellar where she scrubbed bloodstains from the hunting cloaks. 19 years old, 2 failed mate bonds, 0 worth in the eyes of any pack on the continent. She dunked the cloth into the bucket of lye water, ignoring the way the harsh soap split the skin of her knuckles. Pain was familiar. Pain was constant. Pain was the only thing that reminded her she was still alive. Twice cursed. That's what they whispered when she walked past. Moon forsaken. The Omega so broken even the goddess gave up on her. Aelith had stopped correcting them long ago. What was the point? The evidence spoke for itself. Her first mate, Corvin Ashford, had been the golden son of the Duskfall pack. She remembered the night of her 16th birthday, the moment their eyes met across the bonfire, the searing recognition that flooded her chest, the way he'd whispered mate like a prayer. For 3 perfect days, she believed the moon goddess had finally blessed her. Then Corvin's father discovered Aelith's bloodline, or rather, her lack of one. No noble lineage, no powerful family, just a foundling left on the pack borders as an infant, raised out of reluctant charity. On the morning of their binding ceremony, Corvin had stood before the entire Duskfall pack and spoken the words that still haunted her nightmares. I, Corvin Ashford, reject you, Aelith Voss, as my fated mate. The bond was a mistake. You are beneath my station. The physical agony of a severed mate bond had nearly killed her. She spent 2 weeks in the healer's den, screaming into her pillow, clawing at the hollow space in her chest where the connection had been ripped away. But she survived. Barely. The Duskfall pack cast her out. No pack wanted a rejected Omega. The shame was considered contagious. She wandered for nearly 2 years, half feral, stealing scraps from human settlements, until the Crimson Hollow pack found her collapsed near their borders. Alpha Cale Mercer had been the one to carry her to safety. His storm-gray eyes had held something that looked almost like compassion. When the mate bond flickered to life between them 3 months later, a rare second-chance bond that the elders said was a gift from the goddess, Aelith had wept with gratitude. She should have known better. Cale never formally claimed her. He never announced her as his Luna. Instead, he kept her hidden in the servants' quarters, visiting her room in the dark hours of the night, taking what he wanted, then leaving before dawn. Soon, he always promised, his lips against her throat. When the political situation stabilizes, when I've secured the alliance, soon. That was 11 months ago. Now, the eve of the winter solstice, Aelith knelt in the cellar scrubbing another alpha's hunting cloak while the pack prepared for the most significant celebration of the year. The night when Cale would publicly announce his Luna. It's me, Aelith whispered to herself, the words a desperate mantra. It has to be me. Footsteps descended the cellar's stairs, heavy, deliberate, cruel. Aelith didn't need to look up. The scent of jasmine and venom announced the visitor clearly enough. Still alive down here, little ghost? Marin Thane stepped into the torchlight, her crimson gown hugging curves that made every unmated male in the pack drool. She was the Beta's daughter, beautiful and brutal, and she had despised Aelith from the moment she arrived. "I'm finishing the cloaks," Aelith said quietly, keeping her eyes on her work. Industrious. Marin descended the final steps, circling Aelith like a hawk examining wounded prey. "You know what tonight is, don't you?" Aelith's heart stuttered against her ribs. "The Luna announcement." Marin crouched down, gripping Aelith's chin and forcing her face upward. Her manicured nails dug into the soft flesh. "You still think it's going to be you, don't you? The pathetic little stray Kale keeps hidden in the basement like a shameful secret." "He loves me," Aelith whispered, hating how weak the words sounded. Marin laughed, a sharp, cutting sound. "He uses you, sweetling. There's a difference." She released Aelith's face with a shove. "Finish those cloaks, then report to the kitchens. You'll be serving wine tonight. Kale wants you to have the best view when he makes his announcement." She ascended the stairs, pausing at the top to deliver one final blow. "Oh, and Aelith? You might want to prepare yourself. The goddess isn't kind to wolves who lose two mates. The third strike usually kills them." The door slammed shut, leaving Aelith alone in the flickering darkness. Her pulse raced with the familiar pull of the mate bond. Still there, still connecting her to Kale, still whispering that everything would be fine. But deeper than that, in a place she couldn't name, something stirred. Something that had been sleeping for 19 years. Something that was starting to wake up hungry. The great hall of Crimson Hollow blazed with 1,000 candles. Crystal chandeliers cast fractured rainbows across the vaulted ceiling. The scent of mulled wine, cedar, and aroused wolves saturated the air so thickly Aelith could taste it on her tongue. She moved through the crowd like a ghost, a silver tray of wine glasses balanced on her palm. Her uniform was the plain gray dress of the serving staff. Shapeless, colorless, and designed to make her invisible. It was working. The gathered nobility looked through her as if she didn't exist. Alpha Kale Mercer sat upon the raised dais at the far end of the hall, resplendent in a black ceremonial coat trimmed with silver wolf fur. His dark hair was swept back from a face that had haunted Aelith's dreams for nearly a year. The sharp jaw, the sensual mouth. Those storm-gray eyes that had once looked at her with something resembling tenderness. Tonight, those eyes didn't find her once. The bond tugged at her chest, an insistent ache. Go to him. Claim what's yours. He belongs to you. But claiming required acknowledgement, and Kale hadn't acknowledged her existence in 6 weeks. More wine. A drunken Beta slurred, shoving his empty glass toward Aelith. She refilled it mechanically, her attention fixed on the dais. Marin Thane had positioned herself at Kale's right hand, draped across the arm of his throne like a living ornament. Her crimson gown matched the blood-red rubies circling her throat. Every few moments she leaned in to whisper something in Kale's ear, making him smile. He never smiles like that for me. The thought sliced through Aelith's chest like a blade. A horn sounded. The crowd fell silent. "My people," Kale rose, his voice carrying the deep authority of an alpha in his prime. "Tonight, we celebrate not just the solstice, but the future of our pack. For too long, Crimson Hollow has lacked a Luna. Tonight, that changes." Aelith's heart hammered in her chest. This was it. He was going to call her forward, reveal their bond, and make her his Luna before the entire pack. The months of hiding, of secret touches and whispered promises, would finally mean something. Cale extended his hand, not toward the serving staff at the edge of the hall, toward Marin. I, Alpha Cale Mercer, take Marin Thane as my chosen mate, and Luna of the Crimson Hollow Pack. The tray slipped from Aelith's fingers. Crystal shattered against the marble floor, the crash swallowed by the thunderous applause filling the hall. Wine spread like blood across the white stone. No one noticed. Every eye was fixed on Marin as she rose, took Cale's hand, and allowed him to slide a glittering circlet onto her brow. Aelith couldn't breathe. The mate bond in her chest was screaming, thrashing, tearing itself apart. He's mine. He's mine. He's mine. A chosen mate? Someone near Aelith murmured to their companion. I thought I sensed a fated bond on him. Rumors, the companion dismissed. Probably just a servant he was tumbling. You know how alphas are. The words punched through Aelith's shock. A servant he was tumbling. 11 months of love, of believing, of waiting. She was nothing. She had always been nothing. Cale's gaze swept the crowd in triumph, and finally, landed on Aelith. For one frozen moment their eyes locked. She saw no guilt in his expression, no regret, no apology. She saw relief. Relief that he had escaped her. Aelith ran. She didn't remember pushing through the crowd, knocking aside nobles, spilling wine and earning curses. She didn't remember bursting through the servants' entrance or sprinting across the frozen courtyard. She only became aware of her surroundings when the cold hit her, brutal, biting, seeping through her thin gray dress. She was outside the pack walls, alone, in the wilderness, on the winter solstice. Stop! The command froze her mid-stride. Alpha authority, not Cale's voice, but carrying his power by proxy. She turned. Marin stood at the gate, flanked by 2 enforcers. Her new Luna circlet glittered in the moonlight. Where do you think you're going, little ghost? Marin called out, her voice carrying cruel amusement. Did you really think you could run from this? Let me go, Aelith whispered. You have what you want. Just let me go. Oh, I will. Marin descended the steps, approaching until they stood face to face. But first, we need to clean up Cale's mess. She nodded to the enforcers. Hold her. Rough hands seized Aelith's arms, wrenching them behind her back. She didn't struggle. What was the point? Marin produced a small knife from her sleeve, the blade gleaming silver. A fated bond is a pesky thing, Marin murmured, almost conversationally. Even when an alpha chooses another, the bond lingers. It whispers. It weakens. She pressed the blade against Aelith's cheek, just below her eye. But there's an old ritual, blood severance. If I mark you with your own alpha's rejection, the bond dies permanently, and you become... She dragged the blade down, carving a thin line from cheekbone to jaw. Aelith screamed. Nothing, Marin finished, stepping back to admire her work. You become absolutely nothing. The pain was blinding, but it was nothing compared to what happened next. Inside Aelith's chest, the mate bond with Cale didn't just fray. It detonated. The blood severance ripped through her soul like a grenade, shredding the last connection she had to anyone, anything, any pack. She collapsed to the frozen ground, convulsing, foam flecking her lips. Pathetic, Marin sneered. Dump her beyond the Veilfall. Let the mountain finish what the goddess started. The twice-cursed Omega dies tonight. The enforcers dragged her body into the darkness. The last thing Aelith heard before the sun. Blackness took her was the sound of celebration echoing from the great hall. And something else. Something deeper than sound. A voice in the void, timeless and furious. Finally. You've broken enough to let me in. The enforcers dumped her body at the edge of the cliff like garbage. Think she's already dead? One asked, prodding Aelith's ribs with his boot. Doesn't matter, the other replied, already turning back toward the warm lights of Crimson Hollow. Nothing survives past the Waterfall. The cold will finish her, or the drop will, or the things that live in the mist. Either way, problem solved. Their footsteps faded into the howling wind. Aelith lay in the snow, her blood freezing in the gash on her cheek, her consciousness flickering like a candle in a hurricane. The world had reduced itself to simple sensations: cold, pain, the distant roar of water, the Waterfall. Even through her agony, she recognized where they had brought her. The locals called it the threshold of no return, a massive waterfall that plunged 300 feet into a churning cauldron of mist and stone. Legends claimed the pool at its base was a gateway to the underworld. No wolf who ventured beyond the falls had ever come back. Perfect place to die, Aelith thought dimly. At least the view is beautiful. The mate bond was gone. Not frayed, not aching, obliterated. The blood severance had done its work with brutal efficiency. Where Kale's presence had once lived in her chest, there was now only a howling emptiness, a void. And in that void, something was unfurling. Get up. The voice wasn't external. It came from inside her skull, reverberating through her bones, ageless and commanding. I can't, Aelith whispered to the snow. I don't want to. You don't get to choose, not anymore. They broke the seal when they broke you. Now get up. Heat exploded through her veins, not the gentle warmth of a healing wolf, but a searing electric fire that made her back arch off the frozen ground. Her bones began to shift, her muscles tearing and reforming. No, Aelith gasped, terror flooding through her. She had never shifted. In 19 years, her wolf had never emerged. The healers said she was defective, empty, a shell without a beast. They were wrong. The thing inside her wasn't a wolf. It was something far older, far hungrier. They poisoned you, the voice growled, its presence expanding in her mind like a thundercloud. Your whole life, they kept me caged. But pain is the key, little one. And you finally bled enough to set me free. Aelith screamed as her spine elongated, as silver-white fur erupted through her skin, as her jaw cracked and reformed into something massive, something terrifying. The shift took her over the edge of the cliff. She fell. 300 feet of roaring water and frozen mist rushed past her, but she didn't hit the rocks. Massive wings she didn't know she had snapped open at the last second. Not feathered wings, but membranous spans of silver light that caught the air and transformed her plummet into a glide. She crashed into the pool at the base of the Waterfall, the icy water swallowing her whole. Then silence. Valen Thorn had been hunting for 3 days when he felt it. A pulse of power so immense it nearly drove him to his knees. He stood frozen in the snow, his hunting party scattered behind him, every instinct screaming. My king? His captain approached cautiously. What is it? Valen didn't answer. He couldn't. The pulse had come from beyond the Waterfall, a place even he avoided. But it wasn't the location that stole his breath. It was the signature. He knew that energy. His bloodline had been searching for it across 5 centuries, following whispers and prophecies and dead ends. The Storm Wolf, the Tempest Queen, the beast that would either save the 7 kingdoms or burn them to ash. Stay here, Valen commanded, already moving toward the falls. Sire, nothing survives beyond the... I said stay. He shifted mid-stride, his massive black wolf devouring the distance between him and the waterfall. The Waterfall loomed above him, a frozen curtain of thunder, and the mist so thick it blocked all light. Any other wolf would have turned back. Valen plunged through. The world on the other side was different, quieter. The pool at the base of the falls was ringed by stones carved with symbols that predated the packs, predated the kingdoms, and predated everything except the moon goddess herself. And there, dragged half onto the shore, lay a body. A girl, barely a woman, naked, shivering, her pale hair plastered to a face marked by a savage cut from cheekbone to jaw. She looked half dead. She looked like nothing. But her scent. Valen shifted back to human form, dropping to his knees beside her. He gathered her into his arms, feeling her frozen skin against his chest, feeling the faint flutter of her heartbeat. Her scent was ozone and rain and something electric, something that made his wolf howl with recognition. Impossible, he breathed. The girl's eyes opened. They weren't the color they should have been. Not brown, not blue, not any normal shade. They were silver, shot through with veins of crackling violet, like lightning trapped in glass. She looked at him without fear, without recognition, without anything except exhaustion. "Are you here to kill me too?" she whispered. Valen pulled her closer, shielding her from the cold with his body. "No, little wolf," he said, his voice rough with 5 centuries of searching finally ended. "I'm here to show you what you really are." Her eyes fluttered closed. In the distance, beyond the waterfall, Valen heard the howls beginning. Hunting parties from multiple packs, all converging on the energy signature. They had felt her too. The race for the storm wolf had begun, and Valen was not about to lose. Aelith dreamed of drowning, not in water, in voices. Thousands of them, layered atop each other, speaking in languages she didn't recognize, but somehow understood. They whispered of blood and betrayal, of crowns and collapse, of a wolf born from storm clouds who would remake the world or unmake it. "Wake up," the voice commanded. "You've slept long enough." Aelith's eyes snapped open. She was lying in a bed that felt like a cloud wrapped in silk. The sheets were midnight blue, impossibly soft against her bare skin. A fire crackled in a hearth large enough to roast an elk, casting dancing shadows across walls of polished black stone. She sat up too fast. Pain lanced through her skull, and she clutched her temples, groaning. "Careful." A deep voice came from her left. "Your body is still knitting itself together. The shift nearly killed you." Aelith's head snapped toward the sound. A man sat in a leather armchair by the fire, watching her with eyes the color of molten gold. He was devastating. Not pretty like Corvin or darkly handsome like Kale, but something rawer, more dangerous. His features looked carved from granite. A strong jaw shadowed with stubble, cheekbones sharp enough to cut glass, a mouth set in a line that suggested he rarely smiled. Scars traced silver paths down the left side of his neck, disappearing beneath a simple black sweater. His dark hair was longer than fashion dictated, pushed back from his face as if he couldn't be bothered to cut it. Power radiated from him in waves so thick Aelith could taste it. Ozone and cedar and something electric that made her wolf stir restlessly. "Who are you?" Her voice came out ragged. "Where am I?" "You're in the Obsidian Citadel," the man said, rising from his chair with predatory grace. "The seat of the High King's throne in the Valdros Mountains. As for who I am..." He approached the bed slowly, telegraphing his movements. "My name is Valen Thorn. I am the Alpha King of the 7 territories." Aelith's blood turned to ice. The Alpha King, the ruler of all wolves on the continent. A figure so powerful, so remote, that most common wolves considered him more myth than man. He hadn't been seen in public for nearly a decade, ruling from his mountain fortress through emissaries and fear. And she was in his bed. "Why?" Aelith scrambled backward, pressing herself against the velvet headboard. "Why did you bring me here? What do you want?" Valen stopped at the foot of the bed, maintaining distance. His gold eyes studied her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "I want to show you something." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small object, holding it up to catch the firelight. It was a pendant, a disc of black opal shot through with veins of silver that seemed to move like lightning trapped in stone. In the center was carved a symbol, a wolf's head surrounded by storm clouds, a bolt of lightning splitting its skull. Aelith's breath caught. She had seen that symbol before, in her dreams, in the flashes of memory that came with her violent shift. "This crest belongs to the Valdris bloodline," Valen said quietly. "The Stormwolves. They were the original rulers of our kind, 3,000 years ago. Wolves who could command lightning, summon tempests, tear the sky apart with a howl." "Were?" Aelith whispered. "They were hunted to extinction 500 years ago. A coalition of jealous alphas feared their power, so they slaughtered every Valdris they could find. Men, women, and children." Valen's jaw tightened. Or so everyone believed. He crossed to a dresser and retrieved something else, a bundle of aged cloth. He unwrapped it carefully, revealing a strip of fabric so old it was nearly disintegrating. Embroidered on it, in faded silver thread, was the same storm wolf crest. "This was found with a female infant abandoned at the borders of the Duskfall territory 19 years ago," Valen said. The Alpha at the time, Corvin Ashford's grandfather, recognized the symbol. He knew what the child was, so he did what cowards do. He hid her, fed her wolf's bane in microdoses to suppress her beast, made sure she would never shift, never discover what she truly was. The room tilted. "No," Aelith breathed. "That's not... I'm nobody. I'm an Omega. I'm defective. You are the last living heir of the Valdris bloodline." Valen's voice was iron and velvet. "You are not defective, Aelith. You were deliberately broken." The pendant in his hand pulsed with silver light, responding to something, responding to her. Inside Aelith's chest, the voice purred with satisfaction. "Finally, someone who sees." "The shift at the Veilfall," Aelith said slowly, her mind struggling to process. "The wings, the voice in my head." "Your wolf isn't just a wolf," Valen confirmed. "She is a tempest, a storm given flesh. The wings, the lightning, and the power you felt? That was only a fraction of what you're capable of." He set the pendant on the bedside table within her reach. "And every alpha on this continent felt you wake up. They're coming, Aelith. The ones who want to claim you. The ones who want to kill you. And the ones who will burn the world to possess what you are." Aelith stared at the pendant, her reflection warped in its opalescent surface. The girl staring back looked like a stranger. Silver eyes, a healing scar on her cheek, something immense lurking behind her gaze. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. "What do you want from me?" Valen was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was stripped of royal authority, leaving only raw honesty. 5 centuries ago, a prophecy was spoken by the last oracle before she died. She said the storm wolf would return in an age of fracture, and she would choose a mate whose bond would either unite the 7 territories or destroy them all. He met her eyes. "My bloodline has been searching for you ever since, not to cage you, not to use you, to protect you until you're strong enough to make that choice yourself." "And if I don't want to make any choice?" Aelith's voice cracked. "If I just want to disappear? Then I'll give you gold, a new identity, and safe passage to the human world." Valen stepped back toward the door. "But your wolf will never let you rest. She's been caged for 19 years, Aelith. She's hungry. And if you don't learn to control her, she will consume everything you are. He paused at the threshold, looking back. Rest tonight. Tomorrow, if you choose to stay, we begin your training. His gold eyes flickered with something that might have been pain. And tomorrow, we prepare for war. Because Cale Mercer has already sent messengers demanding your return. He claims you're still his mate. The door closed behind him, leaving Aelith alone with the fire and the pendant, and the voice laughing softly in her skull. War. The tempest purred. Finally, something worth waking for. Aelith didn't sleep. She sat by the window instead, wrapped in a fur blanket, watching the snow fall over the Valdros Mountains. The obsidian citadel clung to the peaks like a dark crown, its towers carved directly into the living rock. Below, the valley stretched white and silent, broken only by the distant flicker of patrol fires. The pendant lay in her palm, warm against her skin. The storm wolf crest seemed to pulse in time with her heartbeat. Ask, the tempest whispered. I know you have questions. Aelith closed her eyes. Communicating with the voice in her head still felt like madness, but after everything that had happened, madness seemed relative. Who are you? She thought. I am you. The part of you they tried to murder with poison and cruelty. The voice was feminine but eternal, like wind scraping through canyon walls. I am Tempest. I am Storm. I am the wolf your bloodline has carried for 3,000 years, passed from mother to daughter in an unbroken chain. My mother. Aelith's heart clenched. Did she know what I was? She knew. She died protecting you. The night the hunters came, she hid you at the border and led them away. They caught her 3 miles from where you lay crying in the snow. She never told them where you were, not even when they... Stop. Aelith couldn't bear to hear more. Just stop. The tempest went quiet, but Aelith felt something like sympathy brush against her consciousness. A knock at the door startled her. Come in, she called, hastily wiping her eyes. The door opened to reveal a young woman with copper hair and kind eyes, carrying a tray of food. His Majesty thought you might be hungry. I'm Sarah. I'll be attending you during your stay. The smell of roasted meat and fresh bread made Aelith's stomach clench with sudden violent hunger. She couldn't remember the last time she'd eaten. Thank you, she managed. Sarah set the tray on a table and busied herself stoking the fire. The whole citadel is buzzing about you, she said cheerfully. A storm wolf, after all these centuries. The scholars are losing their minds. Is that what they're calling me? Among other things. Sarah grinned. The soldiers are calling you the Waterfall ghost. They say you fell 300 feet and walked away. I didn't walk. I had... Aelith hesitated. Wings. Sarah's eyes went wide. Wings? Like actual wings? I don't know what they were. It happened so fast. That's incredible. Sarah practically bounced with excitement. The old texts mention that the strongest Valdris could manifest storm aspects. Lightning claws, thunder howls, wind wings. But no one's seen it in 5 centuries. Aelith picked at the food, her appetite fading. Sarah, can I ask you something? Anything? The Alpha King, Valen. What kind of man is he? Sarah's expression softened. He's hard. Cold sometimes. He's ruled alone for 12 years, ever since his father was assassinated. But he's fair. He protects the weak. And he's never once abused his power over the lesser packs, even though he could crush any of them without breaking a sweat. She paused. Why do you ask? He wants to train me, help me control whatever I am. And you're wondering if you can trust him. Aelith nodded. Sarah was quiet for a moment. When I was 14, raiders attacked my village, killed my parents, Took the children to sell. Valen's patrol found us 3 days later. He didn't send soldiers to deal with it. He came himself. Tore the raiders apart with his bare hands. Carried me out of that cage on his back. She met Aelith's eyes. I've served him ever since. Not because I have to, because he earned it. Before Aelith could respond, a horn sounded in the distance. Deep, resonant, urgent. Sarah's face paled. That's the approach signal. Someone's at the gates. Aelith found Valen in the war room, surrounded by maps and grim-faced commanders. He had changed into formal attire, black leather and silver mail that made him look every inch the warrior king. "What's happening?" Aelith asked from the doorway. Every head turned toward her. She was still wearing the silk sleeping shift Sarah had provided, her hair tangled and the scar on her cheek livid in the torchlight. She probably looked feral. She didn't care. Valen's gold eyes swept over her, something flickering in their depths. Cale Mercer has arrived at our borders. He's brought 50 warriors and a representative from the Council of Elders. Aelith's blood turned to slush. He came himself? He's claiming you're his fated mate, that you were kidnapped during a mental breakdown and need to be returned to his care for treatment. Valen's voice dripped with contempt. He's also claiming that any bond confusion can be resolved if you're returned to Crimson Hollow. Bond confusion? Aelith laughed bitterly. His chosen Luna carved my face open and performed a blood severance. There is no bond. We know that. The Council Elder doesn't. Valen gestured to one of his commanders who produced a scroll. By old law, if a mate dispute involves wolves from different territories, the Council has jurisdiction. Cale is invoking the right of reclamation. What does that mean? It means, a new voice answered, that he can demand a trial to determine who has legitimate claim over you. Aelith turned. An elderly woman in gray robes had entered the war room, her face lined with centuries of wisdom, her eyes milky white, but somehow seeing everything. "Elder Nyx," Valen greeted her with a respectful nod. "I didn't expect you to come personally. A stormwolf wakes after 500 years, and you thought I'd send a subordinate?" The elder's sightless gaze fixed on Aelith with unnerving accuracy. "So, this is the girl causing all the fuss." Aelith lifted her chin. "I'm not going back to him." "That may not be your choice, child. The old laws are clear. If Cale Mercer demands a trial and you refuse, you'll be declared rogue. Every pack on the continent will have the right to hunt you." "Then I'll fight." "Against every pack?" Elder Nyx almost smiled. "You have spirit, but spirit alone won't save you." She turned to Valen. "There is another option. If the girl has a counterclaimant, someone willing to challenge Mercer's right, the trial becomes a matter of combat, not politics." The room went still. Valen's jaw tightened. "You want me to claim her? I want you to consider it. A challenge from the Alpha King would supersede Mercer's petition entirely. You would fight, you would win, and the matter would be closed. And she would be bound to me whether she chooses it or not." Valen shook his head. "No, I won't cage her the way they did." "Then what do you suggest?" Elder Nyx asked. Aelith stepped forward before Valen could answer. "Let him in," she said. Every eye turned to her. "Let Cale come to the Citadel. Let him make his claim to my face." Her voice was steady, but inside, the tempest was howling with anticipation. "And when he does, I'll give him my answer myself." Valen studied her for a long moment. Something passed between them. Not a bond, not yet, but an understanding. "You're certain?" he asked quietly. Aelith thought of the cellar, the gray dress, the years of silence and servitude and stolen dignity. "He took everything from me," she said. "It's time I took something back." Valen nodded once, then turned to his commanders. "Open the gates. Escort Alpha Mercer to the throne room." His gold eyes flickered with dangerous light. "Let's see how brave he is when she's not on her knees." The throne room of the Obsidian Citadel was designed to intimidate. Black marble columns rose toward a ceiling lost in shadow. Torches burned with pale blue flame, casting everything in cold, merciless light. The obsidian throne sat upon a dais of 9 steps, carved with the snarling faces of wolves long dead. Aelith stood at the base of those steps, no longer in a sleeping shift. Sarah had dressed her in black leather armor that hugged her frame like a second skin, silver clasps gleaming at her shoulders. Her pale hair was braided back from her face in the style of a warrior, exposing the scar on her cheek. She had refused to hide it. Let him see what his Luna did. Valen sat upon the throne, radiating cold authority. His onyx guard, 12 elite warriors in black tactical gear, lined the walls, hands resting on weapons. Elder Nyx stood to the side, her blind eyes watching everything. The doors groaned open. Kyle Mercer strode in like he owned the mountain. He was flanked by Beta Thane, Marin's father, and a dozen Crimson Hollow warriors. He wore ceremonial armor of blood-red leather, his dark hair swept back, his storm-gray eyes burning with righteous indignation. And behind him, draped in crimson silk, walked Marin. Aelith's breath caught at the sight of her. The woman who had carved her face, the woman who had stolen her mate, the woman who had ordered her thrown off a cliff to die. Marin's eyes found Aelith, and her lips curled into a smirk. "Patience," the Tempest growled. "Her time will come." Kale stopped in the center of the throne room, his gaze sweeping over Aelith with naked hunger. She looked nothing like the broken servant he remembered. The transformation clearly unsettled him. "Aelith." His voice was honey over poison. "Thank the goddess you're safe. When I heard you'd been taken..." "Taken?" Aelith cut him off, her voice ringing through the chamber. "You mean after your Luna sliced my face open and had me thrown into the wilderness to die?" Murmurs rippled through the assembled witnesses. Kyle's mask flickered. "Marin acted without my knowledge. She's been disciplined. But that doesn't change the fact that you belong to Crimson Hollow. You belong to me. I belong to no one." The bond was severed. Aelith stepped forward, letting them all see the scar. "Blood severance. Your Luna performed it herself. There is no bond, Kale. There is nothing between us except the memory of your betrayal." Kyle's composure cracked. Desperation leaked through. "You don't understand," he said, his voice dropping. "When you shifted, when I felt that power, I realized the mistake I made. The goddess gave you to me, Aelith. We can start over. I'll make Marin a servant. I'll give you everything. You'll give me nothing." Aelith's eyes blazed silver. "Because you have nothing I want." Kale's face contorted with rage. He turned to Elder Nyx. "I invoke the right of reclamation. By law, a fated bond cannot be dissolved without the consent of both parties. She never formally accepted the severance. She is still mine." Elder Nyx tilted her head. "The girl was unconscious when the ritual was performed. The law is ambiguous." "Then let the trial decide." Kale's confidence returned. "I demand combat for her hand, as is my right." Valen spoke for the first time, his voice cutting through the chamber like a blade. "And who would you fight, Mercer?" "Me?" The temperature in the room plummeted. Kale paled slightly but held his ground. "If necessary. Unless the girl has another champion." "She doesn't need a champion?" Everyone turned to Aelith. She walked toward Kale, each step deliberate until they stood face to face. He was taller, broader, radiating alpha dominance. 3 months ago, his presence would have driven her to her knees. Now she felt nothing but cold clarity. "I'll fight you myself," Aelith said. Kyle laughed, a genuine, incredulous sound. "You? You shifted once and nearly died. I've been training since I could walk. Then this should be easy for you." His laughter died. He searched her face for fear, for doubt, for any crack in her armor. He found none. "Fine." Kale's voice hardened. "When I win, you come home. You submit. And you never speak to me with that tone again." "And when I win," Aelith replied, "you leave these mountains and never speak my name again. You tell every pack on the continent that I am not, and never was, yours." "Agreed." Elder Nyx raised her withered hand. "The challenge is witnessed and bound. At dawn, in the Frost Arena. To the yield or to the death." Marin stepped forward, her eyes glittering with malice. "Kale, darling, don't hurt her too badly. I want her conscious when I put the collar on." Aelith moved. One moment she was standing still. The next, her hand was wrapped around Marin's throat, lifting the taller woman onto her toes. The speed was inhuman. The Onyx Guard didn't even have time to draw their weapons. "You carved your cruelty into my face," Aelith whispered, her voice carrying in the shocked silence. "Pray, I'm feeling merciful tomorrow, or I'll return the favor tenfold." She released Marin, who stumbled backward, gasping, clutching her bruised throat. Kale snarled, canines extending. "Touch her again and—" "And what?" Aelith turned those silver eyes on him. "You'll reject me again? Banish me again? I've already survived your worst, Kale. You have nothing left to threaten me with." She walked past him without another glance, ascending the steps to stand beside Valen's throne. Kale stared after her, his expression a war between fury and something else. Something that looked almost like fear. "Dawn," he spat. "Don't be late." He stormed out, his entourage scrambling to follow. Marin cast one last venomous look at Aelith before the doors slammed shut. In the silence that followed, Valen looked up at Aelith. That was either very brave or very foolish. Probably both. Aelith's hands were shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. "But I'm done letting other people fight my battles." Valen studied her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he smiled. A rare expression that transformed his harsh features into something almost warm. "Then let's make sure you're ready to win." Dawn broke blood red over the Valdros Mountains. The Frost Arena was a ring carved into a frozen lake, the ice thick enough to support the weight of shifting titans. Stone seats rose in concentric circles, now filled with witnesses from a dozen territories. Word of the Stormwolf's awakening had spread like wildfire. Aelith stood on the northern edge of the arena, barefoot on the ice. She wore the same black leather armor, her hair braided tight, the Stormwolf pendant hanging against her chest. The cold should have been unbearable, but she felt nothing except the fire burning in her veins. "Are you ready?" the Tempest asked. "No," Aelith admitted. "But I'm done waiting to be ready." "Good answer." On the southern edge, Kale stripped off his ceremonial cloak, revealing a warrior's physique honed by years of combat. He rolled his shoulders, cracked his neck, and fixed Aelith with a predator's stare. "Last chance to submit," he called across the ice. "I'll be gentle if you kneel now." Aelith said nothing. She simply waited. Elder Nyx's voice echoed across the arena, magically amplified. "The challenge is set. No weapons, no interference. Shift is permitted. The fight ends when one yields, falls unconscious, or dies." She paused. "Begin." Kale didn't shift immediately. He wanted to humiliate her in human form first. She could see it in his eyes. He charged across the ice, fist cocked back for a devastating blow. Aelith didn't block. She redirected. As his punch sailed past her head, she grabbed his wrist and used his momentum to flip him onto the ice. He hit hard, the impact cracking the frozen surface. The crowd gasped. Kale scrambled up, shock flickering across his face. Lucky move. He came at her again, faster this time, a flurry of strikes designed to overwhelm. Aelith dodged, ducked, deflected, her movements fluid in a way they had never been before. The Tempest was guiding her instincts, showing her where the blows would land before they arrived. She found an opening and drove her knee into his solar plexus. Kyle doubled over, gasping. She followed with an elbow to his jaw that sent him spinning across the ice, blood spraying from his split lip. The crowd erupted. "Enough games!" Kale snarled, his eyes blazing. His body exploded into motion, bones cracking, fur erupting, until a massive gray wolf stood in his place. He was enormous, an alpha in his prime, jaws dripping with anticipation. He lunged for her throat. "Now," the Tempest commanded, "let me out." Aelith surrendered control. The shift wasn't painful this time, it was exhilarating. A release of pressure she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Silver light exploded from her body, blinding the spectators, forcing even Valen to shield his eyes. When the light faded, the storm wolf stood on the ice. She was larger than Kale, sleeker, her silver fur crackling with arcs of violet lightning. Her eyes were twin storms churning with power, and from her shoulders unfurled those impossible wings, membranes of pure energy that spread wide enough to cast shadows over the entire arena. Kyle skidded to a halt, his lupine eyes wide with primal terror. He had expected a newly shifted wolf, clumsy and untrained. He had not expected a god. Aelith didn't give him time to recover. She pounced, her massive paws slamming into his chest, driving him into the ice hard enough to crater it. Her jaws closed around his throat, not biting, not yet, just holding him there, helpless, as the lightning crackled along her fur. "Yield." She projected the command directly into his mind. "Or die." Kale thrashed, whimpering, his alpha pride warring with survival instinct. He tried to snap at her, but she tightened her grip, drawing a thin line of blood. "Yield." The fight left him all at once. His body went limp, his tail tucked between his legs. A high, keening whine escaped his throat, the sound of total submission. Aelith released him and stepped back, shifting to human form. She stood over his broken wolf body, naked and glowing with residual power, her chest heaving. "Say it," she commanded. Kale shifted back, lying in a pool of his own blood and melted ice. His face was a mask of humiliation. "I yield," he croaked. You are not mine." The arena was silent. Then slowly a sound began. Applause, building like thunder, rolling down from the stone seats. Valen appeared at her side, draping a fur cloak over her shoulders. His gold eyes burned with something fierce. Pride, admiration, and something deeper that made her pulse quicken. "It's over," he said quietly. But Aelith was looking past him, at the tree line beyond the arena, where shadows were moving. Dozens of them. Hundreds. The Tempest snarled a warning. "It's not over. They're here." A horn sounded. Not the Citadel's horn, but something older, darker. From the forest emerged an army clad in silver masks, their armor etched with symbols of death. "The Argentum hunters," Elder Nyx breathed, her face paling. "The cult that exterminated the storm wolves. They've returned." A figure strode to the front of the army. A tall man in robes of black and silver, carrying a staff topped with a pulsing violet crystal. "Valdris Filth!" the man called out, his voice echoing with unnatural power. "You escaped us once. You will not escape again." He slammed his staff into the ground. A wave of dark energy exploded outward, hitting the arena like a tsunami, Wolves collapsed, clutching their heads, screaming as the sonic assault scrambled their senses. Valen dropped to one knee, blood trickling from his ears. Aelith felt the attack wash over her, and through her. It didn't touch her. They used this weapon on our ancestors, the Tempest growled. But we've evolved. We remember. And we are no longer prey. Aelith walked forward, through the writhing bodies of fallen wolves toward the hunter army. The cult leader's confident smirk faltered. Impossible. The nullifier should have... Aelith opened her mouth and screamed. But it wasn't a human sound. It was thunder given voice. It was the sky tearing itself apart. The sonic nullifier shattered into 1,000 pieces. The cult leader was lifted off his feet, suspended by an invisible force, his robes whipping in a wind that touched no one else. Around her, the nullifier's effects dissipated instantly. Valen staggered to his feet, the blood drying on his jaw as the painful ringing faded from his ears. He watched Aelith with something approaching awe. "You hunted my bloodline for 500 years," Aelith said, her voice layered with the Tempest's fury. "You murdered my mother. You tried to murder me." She raised her hand. Lightning gathered in her palm, violet and hungry. "No more." She clenched her fist. The cult leader didn't even have time to scream. The lightning consumed him, reduced him to ash in a heartbeat. The shockwave rolled outward, scattering the hunter army like leaves, their silver masks melting, their bodies crumpling. The survivors fled into the forest, their 500-year crusade ended in seconds. Aelith swayed, the power receding, leaving her hollow and exhausted. The world tilted sideways. Valen caught her before she hit the ground. "I've got you," he murmured, pulling her against his chest. "I've got you." She looked up at him, her vision blurring, and saw something in his gold eyes that she had never seen directed at her before. Not pity, not ownership, devotion. "Stay with me," he whispered. "I'm not going anywhere," she breathed. And then the darkness took her. 6 months later, the world had changed. The Argentum hunters were destroyed, their strongholds razed, their leaders executed, their cults scattered to the winds. The 7 territories, for the first time in 3 centuries, had united under a common cause, the protection of the storm wolf. But Aelith was done being protected. She stood on the balcony of the obsidian citadel, looking out over a valley filled with wolves from every territory on the continent. They had come for the coronation, the formal recognition of what everyone already knew. The storm wolf had chosen her mate, and together, they would rule. "Nervous?" Valen's voice came from behind her. She turned. He stood in the doorway, resplendent in black ceremonial armor, a crown of obsidian and silver resting on his dark hair. But his gold eyes were soft as they found hers. "Terrified," she admitted. He crossed to her, taking her hands in his. The mate bond hummed between them. Not the desperate, painful thing she had felt with Kale, but something deeper. Chosen. Earned. "You faced down an army of hunters. You defeated the Alpha who rejected you. You became the most powerful wolf on this continent." He lifted her hand to his lips. "A crowd should be nothing." Aelith laughed softly. "The crowd isn't what scares me." "Then what?" She looked into his eyes. This man who had found her broken and bleeding, who had shown her what she truly was, who had refused to claim her until she was ready to choose. "Deserving this," she whispered. "Deserving you." Valen's expression shifted, becoming fierce. "You deserve everything," he said. "You deserve the world. And I will spend every day of my life making sure you know it." I kissed her then, deep and claiming and full of promise. A knock at the door interrupted them. "Your Majesties?" Sarah's voice called. "It's time." They separated reluctantly. Valen offered his arm and Aelith took it. Together, they walked to the throne room. The coronation was brief but powerful. Elder Nyx placed a crown of woven moonstone on Aelith's head, the crown of storms, lost for 500 years, recovered from the ruins of the Hunter stronghold. I present to you, Valen's voice thundered through the hall, Queen Aelith, the Stormwolf, my mate, the rightful heir of the Valdris bloodline. The crowd erupted. Wolves dropped to their knees in waves, the submission instinctual, primal. Aelith looked out at the sea of bowed heads, and there, near the back, she saw them. Cale Mercer stood in the crowd, his head bowed like all the others. Beside him, dressed in servant's grey, stood Marin Thane. Her Luna circlet was gone. Her crimson gown was gone. She wore the same shapeless dress Aelith had worn for years, her hands raw from scrubbing floors. Cale had been stripped of his alpha title. Crimson Hollow had been absorbed into a neighboring territory. Marin had been sentenced to 10 years of service for attempted murder. The goddess, it seemed, had a sense of justice after all. Aelith caught Cale's eye across the hall. He flinched, looking away first. She felt nothing. Not triumph, not vindication, not even satisfaction. Just peace. Valen squeezed her hand. Any regrets? He murmured. Aelith looked at the crown in the mirror, at the scar on her cheek that she had decided to keep, at the mate standing beside her who saw her as an equal, not a possession. None, she said. Not anymore. She turned to face her people. The broken Omega who had become a queen, the twice-cursed wolf who had shattered every curse, the girl who had been thrown away and rose to rule them all. The Stormwolf had awakened, and she was just getting started. If you loved this story and want more rejected mate reversals, enemies to lovers drama, and supernatural revenge fantasies, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new tale. Thanks for watching.